The Kings are out of the in-season tournament with a 127-117 loss to the New Orleans Pelicans. A very disappointing loss, as I wanted the Kings to make it to Vegas and to win the first in-season tournament. The in-season tournament so far has been a big success. Some great playoff-like atmospheres just here in the start of December, exactly what the NBA wanted. But the Kings were just not able to overcome the Pelicans for a third time this season. They are now 0-3 against the Pelicans. And while it does really suck that the Kings got knocked out of the tournament, there was a poll on Kings Twitter. I forget who put it out, but they were pretty much asking, would you rather the Kings win the in-season tournament or win one playoff series? And overwhelmingly, Kings fans wanted one playoff series. So that is the main goal of this season. So we can now focus on that. Doesn't mean it's not disappointing to get knocked out here, but we can kind of just treat this as just another regular season game at this point. The Kings did a much better job guarding Zion Williamson in this game. He only had 10 points. They limited him to 8 shot attempts, but there was just some incredible shot making from other guys on the Pelicans, mainly Brandon Ingram, who was incredible in this game, but also CJ McCollum, who hit some timely buckets. And, there's definitely a bit of discourse around the Pelicans being a tough matchup for the Kings. And it's like, it's definitely a little bit true. But the Kings had shots to win these last two games against the Pelicans. It's not like they got blown out like they did in the first game. They absolutely had their shots. And especially in this one, it really felt like they should have done better, because they really just lost this game in just one stretch of the game. And we can talk about how the Kings need another athletic wing defender. And that is in the future. We know that when the Kings reach their peak, it's going to be because we make an upgrade at the wing position from outside of the current personnel that we have. Like, that's obvious. People are saying that Harrison Barnes is the problem. And it's like, I don't really feel like he's the problem. I think the problem is that this team isn't built in a way that Harrison Barnes can't be the solution. He's just put in a position that he shouldn't be at this point. But I don't want to talk anymore about, in the future, what roster changes we need. I want to talk about what this team right now that we have can accomplish, because we could have won this game. We could have beat the Pelicans. And we haven't in the last 3 games against them. So the stretch where the Kings lost this game, it was about midway through the first quarter to about midway through the second quarter. So, about a 12-minute stretch. And it went from the Kings with a crazy hot start, great ball movement, great player movement, just great offensive start. Sabonis was dealing, and 15-point lead, and then it's just a collapse. And they then went down, I think it was up to 13 points. So a 28-point swing in just a quarter's time. That just can't happen. And it's happened way too much to the Kings this season. That's my biggest worry with this team, is just the streakiness. We've seen this team allow way too many runs, and it's why, yes, we're 11-8. But those 8 losses a lot of them were by a lot of points, because we just allow other teams to go on big runs, and then we have to grind our way back into the games. Even some of the games that we didn't get blown out on, it was because we lost because we let them get big leads, and then we weren't able to grind our way back into them. Sabonis just got subbed out of this game, and the offense just totally went to a standstill. There was just not nearly enough movement. Fox picked a really bad time to have probably his worst game of the season. He turned the ball over close to 4 times in a row. He had 16 assists and 1 turnover last game. He had 4 turnovers, I think, in the first quarter alone, or maybe in the second quarter alone. No, I think it was the first quarter alone in this one. And that was really how the Pelicans went on a run. It was the Kings turning the ball over time after time. And it was just way too much dribbling from the Kings ball handlers and Fox and Monk. There were just too many turnovers, Too much fouling. Definitely some questionable calls with, we're getting back to the Kings fouling people with their faces, with Fox getting hit in the face by Alvarado, getting called for a foul, then somehow it being upheld. And Trey also got hit in the face late in this game. Somehow got called for the foul as well. Don't understand it, but the Kings were fouling too much. And they were not very good on the defensive glass in this one. Too many offensive rebounds, but it wasn't even the Pelicans forcing us to allow offensive rebounds. It was just guys standing around, like almost looking at the shot, expecting it to go in, and then being surprised when it didn't go in, and a Pelican just walks in, grabs the ball, lays it up. It's just really frustrating to watch this team when it's only Sabonis rebounding the basketball. And, I think Herter was pretty good most of the time rebounding the ball. But there were a lot of times from other guys just missing box outs. And it was kind of capitalized at the end of the first quarter when we had a 3-point lead, Pelicans at the free throw line, and JaVale just allows, I don't remember who it was, someone to just easily get an offensive rebound and put it back in at the buzzer. The second half was better. The Kings were scoring, especially at the start of the third quarter, but then couldn't get stops. They kind of kept going on runs, these like little runs, but they just could never get the big one because it would just always be Brandon Ingram hitting a shot to stop it, or it would be CJ McCollum hitting a shot to stop the run, or it would be, like at one point Herter missed 2 threes in a row when we got stops, and it was just, we just could not quite totally reel them back in. And there was that one 3 that just bounced in from Ingram at the end of the third quarter. We were up by 4, and then that one just bounced twice, went in. Keegan's rims out at the other end. We let Alvarado go straight to the rim, and it's a 9-point game at the end of the third quarter instead of a 4-point game or less. That was just a killer moment. I mean, it felt like there were just so many killer moments, just killing our momentum. And that was just what Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum kept doing. Every single one of those shots, I was just like, that is killer. Fox was better at the end of the second quarter and into the second half. He was attacking more and not turning the ball over, getting to the line. He got to the line 13 times this game. A big improvement from last game where he didn't go at all until the very end when they were intentionally fouling. Sabonis went to the line 10 times, so they were getting there. He went 10 for 10 from the free throw line. That was impressive. Domas picked up the triple-double, 26 points, 10 assists, 13 rebounds. He was really good. Malik was really good, 21 points, 5 assists. And there were definitely spurts for the Kings where they would get stops, and then they just could not capitalize and totally cut into the Pelicans' lead. It was so frustrating because at so many points it felt like this is where the Kings are going to get back into it, and they just could never quite do it. Other than those Ingram and McCollum killer shots, there was one fourth quarter just play where the Kings could have cut it to one possession. They got the stop, and then just no one goes for the rebound. No one boxes out, and a Pelican player just walks in, grabs the ball. Just total momentum killer. There were some rough foul calls that were momentum killers. Like, it just felt like every single time we went on a little run, the momentum would just totally get stopped by either a tough shot from the Pelicans, a missed shot from the Kings, a bad mistake from the Kings, or a rough call. We also didn't go to Sabonis much in the fourth quarter when we were finally getting stops. We could have really cut into the lead, and then we just kind of went away from having Sabonis in the offense. And that, I feel like that just happens too much in the fourth quarter. I think it was a game against San Antonio when they just kept feeding him in the fourth quarter. And I was like, this is what I've been waiting for. Finally, we're getting Sabonis the ball in the fourth quarter. Because last season we did it too. Sabonis kind of disappears offensively. He doesn't get the same touches in the fourth quarter. And I get it that you go more pick and roll with Fox and Monk, but that doesn't mean you can't get him touches, especially when he was dominating in the way he was in this game. I thought his defense was pretty solid as well. Like, he stuffed Zion a few times. His help was pretty good. I thought Herder's defense was also pretty solid. Keegan's defense, I thought it was a good effort of trying to harass Ingram, and Ingram was just hitting tough shots over him. I thought for most of the game, the Kings were either playing solid defense or they had the right ideas, and they were just missing the rotations. At the start of the game, the rotations were really good. Then they had that stretch where they were turning the ball over, so the Pelicans were more scoring in transition, and then the rotations kind of fell apart. Like it was the right idea, doubling Zion, trying to take away Ingram, and then there were a couple plays where Fox just fell asleep, 2 plays in a row off ball, and they were able to score off that. It's like there were so many possessions where I felt like we were so close. Other than Monk, the bench didn't play too much in this game. Monk had 32 minutes. Lyles had 16. His 3-point shot was off, but he was doing other things. He was getting into it with Valanciunas. Those are two guys that I could definitely imagine getting into it. Like if you told me, things are going to get chippy, yeah, it's probably going to be Trey Lyles and Jonas Valanciunas. The Kings definitely have some history with Valanciunas when Valanciunas broke Chimezie Metu's wrist and somehow didn't get any punishment for it. While the play wasn't going on, by the way, on a totally unnecessary play. So Trey kind of trying to get back at him for that. I liked that energy that he was bringing. I always like Trey getting into it with guys. Despite his shot being off, Trey's always good for trying to get to the rim, making things happen. He had 6 assists in this game. He was the second leading King in assists. That is probably the first time that has happened ever. Davion was available in this game, but Keon got the backup 1 minute, 2 minutes. And I thought his length was solid in the 8 minutes he played. He knocked down a 3, got to the free throw line, hit 2. He was pretty solid. Vezenkov didn't see much of the floor in this one, probably just matchup wise. We were just keeping a tighter rotation in this one. Same thing with JaVale. I feel like in all 3 games against the Pelicans, we progressively got better. Like horrible in the first one, pretty bad in the second one, better in this one. And we still lost it, but I guess there's some positive to take out of looking better in each one. Keegan still looks like kind of hesitant offensively, especially within the 3-point arc. And he, at one point in the second quarter, went back to the locker room like he re-aggravated his back, but then he came back out in the second half. He definitely doesn't look 100% yet, but he did knock down 4 threes and chipped in 14 points while doing his best on Ingram, really getting up into him. Herder's offense was pretty solid in this one. It definitely didn't feel like it was any 1 or 2 players that lost this game for the Kings. Fox definitely needed to be better in that stretch in the first half. But yeah, you could say Barnes could have played better defense, but like he was holding Zion pretty well. A lot better than he did in the first 2 games. That's all I'll say. And the team defense was much better. You could definitely see if he ever got switched onto Ingram, then that was a problem. But he held his own for the most part against Zion. Didn't do as much offensively, though, as he did in the previous ones against Zion. He didn't make him work as much. The Kings definitely tried to target CJ McCollum on the offensive end, and that worked pretty well, especially in the second half. And they tried to bring Zion into the action, but never really capitalized off it. There were only a few times where they scored on him. And you can see he's just a horrible defender. Like, he just does not try, really, very much on that end. He just gives up easy baskets, puts his team in really bad spots. And I think the Kings could have taken advantage of that a little more. I just feel like it was that one stretch, too many turnovers and dumb decisions, and then the Kings just being slightly off defensively. Like, they just need to be a little more disciplined. Too many flybys on closeouts. Too many times guys getting, too much space while coming off of screens. Obviously, mainly talking about Brandon Ingram there, but CJ McCollum too. Trey Murphy definitely adds a lot to this Pelicans team. He was a by far team high plus 24. When the Pelicans went small, that was the time that caused the Kings the most issues. It's when they just put in all their wings and have a bunch of length that can disrupt the Kings. That's when I think they were at their best against us. Like when Valanciunas is in the game, I think that's honestly a win for us. But it's when they put out all their wings. Najee Marshall, Trey Murphy, when they put out Jose Alvarado to, do some grand theft Alvarado and all those guys, Dyson Daniels, all their long guys. That's what really disrupts us. Fox did a better job in the second half, but he was just really bothered by the length of those guys. I think the most frustrating part of this game is it felt like the exact same script in the first half as the first two games against the Pelicans of have a pretty solid first quarter, although the Kings kind of let it slip a little, more in this. Like they had a better start in this one than they did any of the other ones, which also means they let it slip even more. But then it's just the second half of the first half, either the second quarter or in this one, obviously the end of the first quarter, the Pels just absolutely lighting us up and the Kings offense going totally cold. The Kings just have to figure out a way of stopping these massive extended runs. Like basketball's a game of runs. The NBA has so many runs. That's just how it works. But these are not 12-minute runs. These are, 3-minute runs, 2-3-minute runs where you gain 6 to 10 points on the other team. The problem the Kings are having this season is these are really long, extended runs of just the Kings going completely cold offensively. They don't necessarily do any worse defensively than they normally do, but because they're worse offensively, it's just more turnovers, which leads to more easy buckets for the other team. And it just happens for way too long before the Kings can put a stop to it. Those runs definitely tend to happen when it's either Fox coming out of the game or Sabonis coming out of the game. Those times when only one of them is in there with the bench unit coming in, and we just can't figure out a way to get enough offense or not turn the ball over. The Kings have played 4 home games in a row. They're 2-2. They're now going to go on the road to, I believe, face the loser of the Suns-Lakers game tomorrow night. And so that'll be a tough matchup. But then they come home, they play at home against Brooklyn. Then they go on the road to face the Clippers. Then they play 6 straight home games. And so that home game against Brooklyn is not a great team. The homestand, you have the Thunder, solid team. Utah, that should be a win. Washington, that should be a win. Boston, Phoenix, Minnesota. So a couple very winnable games and then some tougher games. But this is kind of the part of the schedule where the Kings need to take advantage because really it's not the homestand. Of course, you want to do well in the homestand, but then after the homestand, the schedule gets a lot easier. But you got to defend home court, which is something that the Kings just did not do well last season. They've done a much better job this season. Started out 5-1. Now they're 6-3 at home. Still fine. But I just don't think this team is going to have the same type of success that they had on the road last season, which was kind of crazy, more wins on the road than at home. And it just feels like this team has so many letdowns at home in big games. Not in the playoffs last season, but like this game. You had the really hyped up home game last year against Minnesota to clinch a playoff berth, and that was just a huge letdown energy-wise. It feels like a couple of the last ones against the Warriors, against the Clippers. They've just come out with just not the right energy that they need. And it sure ain't the crowd's fault. They're the crowd's providing energy. Just the Kings don't feed off it until the second half, it feels like. And they've just got to start better. They started better in this one, but then obviously just fell apart. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back whenever we play our next game against the Lakers or Suns. I don't even know when that's going to be. But I think we get a few days off here. Or maybe it'll be on Wednesday. Honestly, I don't know. But I'll be here whenever that happens. Peace.